Good morning to everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation to take part in Professor Lovejoy Memorial Symposium. Apologies for not being able to be with all of you face to face. Unfortunately, I was caught by the COVID-19 virus and could not travel, which is of course the right way to combat the pandemic. I'm symptoms free and hopefully will be back to quasi-normal life within a few days. I feel very honored to take part in this symposium in honor of Professor Lovejoy. I met him for the first time long ago in 1976 in the city of Manaus in the Amazon. I was only 25 years old and on my first job working as an engineer at the National Institute of Amazonia Research, the famous INPA. Tom was starting to plan for the Forest Fragments project. It's a beautiful project that he dedicated many decades of his life. And I was introduced to him by INPA's director at that time, the famous geneticist, Dr. Warwick Kerr. Throughout my career, I interact with Professor Lovejoy in a number of occasions. A very informal encounter took place almost 20 years ago. I was at the Tropical Hotel in Manaus, and all of a sudden, I came across Tom by the hotel swimming pool. He had taken a number of grand Hollywood actors, actresses to the Amazon to show them the importance of the forests. I recall that he introduced me to Tom Cruise, and I had a short but nice conversation with Cruise. Let me now share my presentation to you. So, Jeremy, can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I will basically convene to you the results of the Science Panel for the Amazon, which really address very, very completely the climate change and global science in the Amazon. Of course, we in the panel, Science Panel for the Amazon, we feel very honored, and we dedicated the report also to Professor Lovejoy, which was very, very helpful in the work of the panel. Also, of course, Professor Lovejoy's quotes in the internet are thousands, and a very popular person conveying the importance of the Amazon. I picked this one, just one example, like 2019, visiting the Brazilian Amazon. His expression, the Amazon is basically a biodiversity treasure chest to be explored by science with all the benefits that may produce, even if only dimly perceived at this point. To permit it to be degraded or largely destroyed would be equivalent to discarding the most important library for building the life science. So that summarizes perhaps almost 50 years of his career studying and defending the Amazon. So basically, I will give you a short summary of the Science Panel for the Amazon. The Science Panel for the Amazon, it was established in September 2019 at the United Nations Climate Summit in New York by Professor Jeffrey Sachs and Emma Torres, inspired by the Leticia Pact. We put together about 240 scientists, 65% from the Amazonian countries, 42% women, including 7 indigenous scientists, authors. We had a 13-member science steering committee, and also a strategic committee of respected leaders of and for the region, and from the region as well. And Professor Lovejoy was one of our key strategic committee members and provided fantastic help and information and assessments that really made us do a great job. And the report was released during COP26 in Glasgow in November 2021 and has had a tremendous repercussion. And we are continuing with the work of the panel. We hope to continue for at least 5 more years. So the main goals of the panel, very briefly, just wanted to say, we systematize information for a rigorous scientific assessment on the state of the Amazon ecosystem and its people. We look at the current trends and implications, tremendous transformation the Amazon is going through, and also, and this is unlike perhaps IPCC, IPBES reports, which cannot be policy prescriptive, we move towards finding solutions, explore opportunities and policy relevant options for the conservation and sustainable development of the Amazon. So those are the main goals of the report. And we structured the report, all these 240 authors in 3 components, 3 parts. Part 1, the Amazon as a regional entity of the Earth system. Part 2, anthropogenic changes in the Amazon, drivers and impacts. And part 3, as I mentioned before, the solution space, finding sustainable pathways for the Amazon. This is almost 1,300 pages, 34 chapters. And so basically, I think we should really think about, there are clearly, it's a very complex and diverse system that needs urgent solutions. The resilience of the Amazon ecosystems is very dependent on complex interactions due to its extraordinary, unique, and irreplaceable biocultural diversity. So basically, we have to look for potential solutions for this systemic crisis. The Amazon is also very important to global crisis of climate change and biodiversity. So the Amazon basin represents large components of the global carbon cycle. It's a critical element of the global climate system. Of course, it's the largest place for this biological and cultural diversity. And unfortunately, there is only a narrow window of opportunity to change the trajectory that the Amazon has unfortunately taken in the last 50, 60 years. And I just want to raise and to bring to you one of the key conclusions, the most important conclusions of the panel, which is act now. It's a moratorium on deforestation for degradation of wildfires in southern Amazon, zero deforestation degradation on the whole Amazon by 2030, and also urgent implementation of a new bioeconomy of health, standing forests and flowing rivers. So this is the key messages, and what to do to reduce the risks of ecological and social tipping points: immediately stop deforestation, degradation, wildfires, create this new bioeconomy, healthy standing forests and flowing rivers. You're going to listen to me many times repeating this concept. Governments' commitments in Leticia Pact, most except Venezuela, all the other Amazonian countries signed the commitments, but unfortunately we are not seeing a move towards really filling out the goals of that commitment, and also major policies and practice forest conservation and restoration. So let me start with part 1, the 4 components of part 1, the geological evolution, the biodiversity, ecosystem function evolution in the Amazon, biosphere, atmosphere interactions, and also a little bit on the evolution of people in the Amazon. So this is a complex Amazonian at a glance, biological and biocultural diversity. So all the ecosystem function and interactions. I might take 10 minutes just to go through. I just want to highlight the report really looks very carefully how science demonstrates how important this biological, ecological, and also social, cultural diversity is in the Amazon. All resources, genetic resources, the indigenous people and populations, the carbon storage, the ecosystems that the forest provides, the ethnic variety, the biodiversity. So this is summing up all this very important diversity, biological and biocultural diversity in the Amazon. So also the report in the first couple of chapters deals with the geological evolution over several, close to 60 million years the Amazon started forming. Before, of course, the river flow, there was no Andes, so the river flow was towards the Pacific. But of course, after the Andes formation, something like 20 million years ago, there was this big lake, and then that lake was being reduced by the so-called aqueous system because of the Andes uplifting, create a lot of erosion that was flooding the lake, and it started, something like 10 million years ago. The Amazon River start flowing towards the Atlantic. So that was, the Andes was formed something like 7 million years ago, and so all the ecosystems were developing the ecosystem as we know today in the last 7 million years. Of course, the river system in the Amazon is the most, the largest river, 220,000 cubic meters per second, largest number of tributaries in the planet. So it's, as I said, the largest river drainage in the world, and it drains all the 8 different countries and 1 territory. Of course, because of this altitudinal difference, 5,000 meters in the Andes, all the way to the sea level in the Atlantic, and this long evolution in millions of years, the Amazon, in fact, there is this tremendous diversity, more than 50 ecosystems of vegetation types, from forests to savannas to wetlands, land, and aquatic and terrestrial, different ecosystems. And of course, the connectivity between the Andes and the lowlands, and the connectivity between terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems is crucial to conserve Amazon biodiversity. And also, of course, this particular evolution over millions of years created this very unique condition. As I said, the Amazon lowland forest houses the greatest concentration of biodiversity on Earth, more than 10% of the described species, compressed into about 0.5% of Earth's land and 0.001% of Earth's water. We always quote this figure just to give you an idea. 1 hectare of lowland forest in the Amazon has more tree species than all of Europe. Just to give you one idea how tremendously biodiverse the Amazon forest is, with all these species, 16,000 tree species, more than 40,000 seed plants, butterflies, mammals, fishes, birds, amphibians, reptiles. So, and still, there is very clear, particularly non-vertebrated, there is a vastly underestimated the Amazon biodiversity. Just to give you this figure here about ants, species estimated, and more than 1 million species exist in the Amazon, but they only 157,000 have already been identified. So this is a minimum number, maximum number. So this is for all these insects. So you see still how vastly underestimated the Amazon biodiversity is. And of course, biosphere-atmosphere interactions, they're unique in the Amazon, very similar to other tropical forests, but they are unique in terms of the carbon cycle, the interaction between aquatic ecosystems, aquatic carbon dynamics, the terrestrial aquatic interactions. The terrestrial carbon dynamics, a very large store of carbon, and of course the nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycles, many other micronutrient cycles, and the interactions between the forest and the atmosphere due to ozone and photochemistry, meaning very low levels of ozone, and also aerosols, volatile carbon aerosols, volatile components as clouds, condensation, nuclei. So this is a very important interaction between the ecosystems, aquatic, terrestrial, and the atmosphere. And of course, over millions and millions of years, the Amazon forest has developed a very efficient water recycling due to deep-rooted wood trees. And very important, very few people know about that, except perhaps scientists from the Amazon. The transpiration of these trees is higher during the dry season, which supports the recycling of water. So it's a short dry season because there's tremendous recycling of water due to this very efficient ecological system developed over millions of years. So if there is no forest, the rainfall would be much less and the recycling will be much less. And of course, this recycling means that one water vapor molecule entering, carried by the trade winds here, recycled 5 to 8 times before exiting the forest, the rainforest here in the Andes to Colombia and to southern South America. This is a tremendous source of water vapor for snow systems here and for rainfall south of the Amazon. So this is unique in caused by this very efficient recycling and this the implementation over millions of years of this efficient recycling of water. And of course, because the Amazon forest is closed canopy, only very little solar radiation reaches the forest floor. Therefore, the forest floor vegetation litter is very humid, very wet, and not flammable. That's why lightning strikes, fires did not propagate for millions of years. And that is one reason for the evolution of the forest and also biodiversity. Of course, in the last 12,000 years, humans came to the Amazon. So by the time Europeans came to the Amazon, 1508 to 10 million indigenous people, more than 100 distinct languages, ethnic groups. Today, there are 2.2 million indigenous people, more than 410 groups, around 80 of which remains isolated, and about 300 indigenous languages spoken in the region today. Also, indigenous occupation of the Amazon transformed the Amazonian landscapes. Now, on the right-hand side here, you see many species like Brazil nuts, acai berry, and cocoa, and many other species that they were growing those species for thousands of years. They manage the forest system, maintaining the forest standing, but manage. So that's very important. And women have played a prominent role in promoting, managing, and protecting agro biodiversity. So they develop a scientific science to maintain the forest, but also to provide their needs out of the forest. And of course, also something like, let's say, the landscape transformations associated with the history of these indigenous people in the Amazon. 7,000 years ago, they start ceramic production, and very important, Amazonian dark earth. The Amazon soil is very, very poor of nutrients, the lowland, except the Andes. The slopes, they are richer in nutrients, but the lowlands are very poor. So they develop a system to increase fertility, and that's what they use for this indigenous agriculture. So part two is mostly what happened in the last 60 years since government started a new development model. So the chapters deal with the living, moving, and working in the Amazon, policies in the Amazon, drivers and the impact of changes, and particularly climate change in the Amazon. So I want just to highlight here one paper, Professor Lovejoy and myself, we wrote for Science Advances, a warning, and that was February 2018, a very serious warning, how close we were to the tipping point. And of course, I just want to make one comparison. If you look at the painting here, the Atlantic rainforest in Brazil, 1843, what we should learn from Atlantic forest history. This view shows a primary forest that's being reduced to charcoal. And then when we look at 2019, and you look at that over the last 60 years in the Amazon, so that's what we are seeing in the Amazon in the last 50, 60 years, the forest being reduced to charcoal. Very similar to something that happened in the Amazon, in the Atlantic forest. 150 years ago, it happened in the U.S. Wild West, moved towards the Wild West. But so that was really a view of development. I have the phrase, the sentence by former President Medici in 1970 when he was inaugurating the Amazon, the Trans-Amazon Highway in the military dictatorship 6485, land without man to landless man. I mean, of course, he ignored completely the existence of indigenous people, traditional population. And this is on the right-hand side here, propaganda, official propaganda, early 70s by Ministry of Interior, the Amazon Bank, and the development agency in the Amazon Sudan. Enough of legends, let's make money. So you see here the cattle, you see dams, electricity, tractors, highways. So that was the idea. And this text here, I'm not going to read it, is saying, come to the Amazon to make money out of mining. They call the Amazon, the Trans-Amazon is it's a highway for reaching the gold mine. So that was the concept for many, many decades. And unfortunately, it's still there in the Amazon. So what is the result of this so-called quote unquote development model? Deforestation in the Amazon. You see here on the left-hand side, this is the forest areas here. And here is the degraded areas, which are stages that would reach to deforestation. So 18% of the Amazon basin is the forest. 17% of the Amazon biome is several stages of degradation, you can see here. And the most of the deforestation is in the Brazilian Amazon, in the so-called deforestation belt or R. And you hear also near the Andes, also on the slopes and lowlands in the other Amazonian countries. The driver of deforestation, really the official roads, 95% of all deforestation take place within 5.5 kilometers on both sides of all the roads. You can see the burned areas, still fire, unfortunately, is used in the agricultural sector in the Amazon. Also, this is mining, this is concessions of mining and a lot of illegal activities. Most of the mining in the Brazilian Amazon is illegal. And also existing and planned dams in the Amazon. The yellow ones are still many dams are being planned. So this agricultural expansion is the main driver of deforestation. In the Brazilian Amazon, estimates indicates that active or abandoned degraded pastures occupy 80% of the forest areas. 90% of the first deforestation is to produce a new cattle ranch. So we see here, I will just summarize a little bit the drivers and impacts of deforestation. Drivers for deforestation are dams, roads, pasture, agriculture, mining. So we are losing a lot of carbon, altogether more than 1 billion tons. We are also seeing a decrease in rainfall and retention of water in the soil, so increase in discharge in rivers like Tocantins or Araguaia River, very where the arc of deforestation is. Decreased biodiversity projection up to 36% decrease in tree species by 2050. The landscape is very 2.5 hotter with lower number of forest patches. Decreases precipitation in the Amazon as a whole, increased risk of climate tipping point. I will go more about that. And of course, in the last 20 years, we are seeing more areas being degraded than clear-cut deforestation. This is due to climate change, but mostly to forest fires, the edge effects of fires propagating from cattle, from pastures to the nearby forest, from hunting, logging, and also logging is the main driver of the beginning of the forest degradation. So you see also they reduce evapotranspiration, they make the forest more flammable, large emissions, 4.2 tons of carbon dioxide per hectare, a very serious risk, social, environment, and health disaster. Also, maximum temperature can be as high as 6 degrees higher, large loss of carbon, also mortality and reduction of key species, dispenser, decomposer, So, and also the degraded forest becomes more vulnerable to invasive species. And of course, I showed that before. I just want to highlight the existing in purple and planned in yellow dams. Still, the Amazon is seen as a place for large dams. There are 307 existing, 239 planned. But of course, the impact of dams on the aquatic ecosystems, human well-being is terrible. You see here the pollution in many countries, the impact on fish biodiversity. Many fishes are running the risk of extinction. Severe pollution in indigenous Yanomamis territories, many indigenous territories, mercury pollution, creating a terrible health problem, almost a disaster. And this is all happening due to also this transformation of aquatic ecosystems. And of course, when we put together deforestation, degradation, plus the cumulative burn areas, as I mentioned, the Amazon, the burning of the forest, not only burning pasture lands, but also the forest, the fires are spreading to the forest floor because of degradation, because of global warming. So we are very close, the synergistic interactions between climate change, increased frequency of droughts, 2005, 2010, 2015, 2020, and fires and degradation. So we may very close in southern southeastern Amazon to the tipping point. I just want to highlight, this is one warning that Professor Lovejoy and myself also issued. If deforestation exceeds 20-25% and warming exceeds 2.5 degrees, we may really move from this whole forest ecological equilibrium between forest and the climate system, but also to this one. The forest will remain only over western Amazon near the Andes because rainfall there is very high. And we have the risk of losing 60 to 70% of the forest within 30 to 50 years. And so most of the Amazon central, eastern, southern, southeastern, southwest Amazon will become this very degraded ecosystem, open canopy, degraded ecosystems, losing tremendous biodiversity and losing a large amount of carbon. So this is not only, I just want to raise the importance, because this is not only, let's say, a warning based on climate ecological modeling approaches with sophisticated Earth system models. Yes, there are tens and tens of models issuing those warnings, including IPCC report. But it's more worrying is that we are seeing unfolding that in the Amazon. It's not only a model predicted warning. So we are seeing very concerning. This is the duration, the length of the dry season in southern Amazon. It has from 1979 to the present, the southern Amazon dry season length has increased more than 5 weeks in the last 40 years. It's almost a week per decade, more than a week per decade recently. So the dry season was 3 months, now it's more than 4 months. If it reaches 5 to 6 months, then it's a climate envelope of a different ecosystem. No longer a forest. There is no places that you have a forest where the dry season is very long, like 5-6 months. So the Amazon is about 1.2 degrees warmer and 2 degrees warmer in the dry season in southern Amazon. So we see that the interaction between climate change due to global warming and the local climate change due to deforestation, degradation, reducing recycling, the pasture does not recycle water. So we are seeing that. We are seeing the carbon cycle. Now this red is emissions, the green is removals. So when we look at the whole basin, because of deforestation, fires, we are seeing the Amazon is almost neutral. It's a small sink. In the 1980s was removing 2 billion tons of carbon. Now it's removing much less. And also there's a recent study. This green box here means that in this area of the Amazon, northern Mato Grosso, southern Pará states, the forest is a carbon source even during the wet season because of tremendous increase in tree mortality. The increase in tree mortality is from here, all this area, southern Amazon, all the way even to French Guiana and Amapá state. So we are really at the edge of this tipping point, and this is IPCC report, the last report showing in the future with high emission scenarios, all of these biomes in South America, mostly the Amazon, becomes a carbon source. And as I said, if we cross the tipping point, more than 300 billion tons of carbon would be emitted into the atmosphere, making impossible to reach the Paris Agreement targets. So, and part 3 is this solution space, finding sustainable pathways for the future of the Amazon. First, we come up with a vision, a vision for a living Amazon, and also the practical policies for conservation, restoration, remediation. What would be a new bioeconomy, and how to empower the Amazonian people. And again, in December 2019, Professor Lovejoy and myself, we wrote another piece for Science Advances, in which we really addressed this issue of solution space. In 1918, we were warning about how close we are to a tipping point. In 2019, December, we said, okay, let's look for solution spaces, zero deforestation, degradation, forest restoration, and the standing forest bioeconomy. And of course, the panel dedicated many chapters in that direction. And in that direction is how to move towards a fair and just transformation. Basically, this living Amazon vision, the Amazon we want is a living vision to bring sustainable development and well-being to Amazonian people, while conserving the unique resource of the Amazon and advancing on a sustainable development trajectory that will reduce the risk of passing dangerous tipping points. So this vision has many components, but conservation, restoration, remediation, this new bioeconomy, and the empowerment of people and governance. So I don't have a lot of time to enter too much into the details. I would just to summarize some of these conclusions. So, so this living vision for a sustainable Amazon. So we have really to empower the Amazon people to respect their rights, their knowledge and well-being, how to create a governance and finance system towards this new model, conservation, restoration, and this new bioeconomy of healthy forests and standing rivers. There is really no single or simple solution. We need take into consideration the biocultural diversity, so that does not have to be the last 60 years of quote-unquote development model in the Amazon, which ignores completely biocultural diversity in the Amazon, you know, with respect to territory, indigenous and local knowledge, the languages, urban and rural livelihoods, and governance. So we need a broad set of initiatives to be adopted, replicated, adjusted, and scale up in this sustainable pathway. The participation of Amazonian people is critical in planning, implementing all these activities, and as key to their success. And the political representation of Amazonian people at all levels of governance needs to be promoted and safeguarded. Fortunately, today, local populations have very little political power. Amazon people's rights, knowledge, and well-being, really, we need to implement much powerful governance and management of lands and natural resources. A big challenge that the panel pointed out in many chapters is how to merge, how to combine traditional knowledge with scientific knowledge. So therefore, in particular, let's say if we look at the importance of restoring, we have this big challenge of restore, regenerate, perhaps over southern Amazon, 1 million square kilometers of deforested and degraded land from the Andes all the way to the Atlantic. So we have to create a network, protect areas effectively managed, innovative approaches for conservation and restoration implemented, aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems that have to be conserved, restored, sustainably used, to create this resilience and landscape connectivity, and also that these systems provides benefits to the Amazonian people. So basically, the restoration, we may look at several scales across the basin, and also at the scale of catchments and landscape. But basically, the conclusion of these chapters, they say Amazon ends transition from high altitudes, 500 to 1300 meter altitude, and particularly in the arc of deforestation, southern and southeastern Amazon, recovering this biodiversity and ecosystem function and services such water quality, carbon sequestration. 1 hectare of a secondary forest removes 10 to 15 tons of carbon dioxide a year, and improving people's livelihoods. Recovery of socially just and sustainable economic activities on the forest lands. And we should really have a dream, let's say a project that I'm calling Amazon Reforestation Belt, restoration of 1 million square kilometers of the forest and degraded land. Now moving to the chapters talking about this bioeconomy based on the social biodiversity. Of course, I mean, we know today that a new bioeconomy that we coined the term healthy standing forests and flowing rivers because we do not need hydropower dams. We can have renewable energy and fulfill this new development model. But healthy standing forests because the potential of agroecological systems with hundreds of forest products is very large. And we have demonstrations for, let's say, acai berry, Brazil nuts, cocoa, many oils, and indigenous art. So there are a lot of potential. So this is the concept. It's a complex concept, but how to develop the strategies to develop this new bioeconomy of standing forest flowing rivers. So we need to invest in education, science, research, technology, innovation. I reiterate, combine traditional knowledge with scientific knowledge. It's a big challenge. Create fiscal and financial incentives to engage the private sector. The private sector is still engaging, but very slowly. Multilateral institutions and innovation for the sustainable value chains. Promote very large number of green job creations. The agroecological systems in the Amazon, they improve their lives. You know, in the last 30 years, let's say the acai berry agroecological systems have improved the lives of those people. Still, they are poor. They did not reach middle class, but they improved their lives. Invest in rural, urban, and peri-urban sustainable infrastructure and bio-industrialization of forest products. So this is the concept and the proposals for this new bioeconomy. So this new bioeconomy is an invitation to rethink the meaning of development and economic growth in a forest region. This is an unprecedented challenge. We do not have any standing forest bioeconomy in any tropical forests in Amazon, tropical Africa, Southeast Asia. So this is something we should take together as a big challenge, but we have ways to win, to overcome this challenge. And a far and just transformation, also governance and finance, stop deforestation, forest degradation. That has to be knowledge-based policies, designated and implemented, effective civil society participation, and also global partnership for resource and financial investments in this sustainability-oriented model. Securing rights of the Amazon people, as I said before, is governance and management lands and natural resources, and the combination of traditional knowledge and scientific knowledge. So basically, I showed that you before, no single or simple solution, but time matters and full engagement of Amazonian people is essential. So this is the way to move forward. And we are, the authors of the panel, we are optimists that there are ways. We know how to move. We have to give scale moving towards the sustainable bioeconomy and sustainability empowerment of Amazonian people. So I'm finishing. I just want to say knowledge of this living and sustainable vision, knowledge of the Amazonian nature based on science and technology innovations, and indigenous peoples, local communities' knowledge as the path to sustainable socio-economic development, environmental conservation, and a healthy standing forest and flowing rivers bioeconomy. Let me just, before I finish, just recall one more sentence, Professor Lovejoy, that we coined together recently, 2019. We are scientists who have been studying the Amazon and all its wondrous assets for many decades. Today, Professor Lovejoy for more than 50 years, in my case for 40 years. Today, we stand exactly in a moment of destiny. The tipping point is here. It's now. The peoples and leaders of the Amazon countries together have the power, the science, and the tools to avoid a continental scale, indeed a global environmental disaster. So this is a thought, a beautiful thought of Professor Lovejoy, and feel very honored to join Professor Lovejoy. So basically the key messages of Professor Lovejoy's life and also now of the panel is let's save the Amazon, let's save the Amazonian population. This is the Amazon that's the Amazon we want. Let me finish my presentation and let me just say, again, I have to thank you very much, the opportunity. Let me finish by saying how inspiring was Professor Lovejoy for myself and for guiding my own career. You know, when I met Professor Lovejoy in 1976, I met him as an engineer, but my vision of science inspired by Professor Lovejoy really made me change my career. I decided to become a scientist, so he was an inspiration for me. Thanks again, Professor Jeremy Campbell, for the invitation to take part in this great event. I'm sure that all of us will continue to work very hard and forever to fulfill Professor Lovejoy's dream of saving the Amazon forest and its biodiversity and its people. Muchas gracias. Obrigado. Thank you to all.